Thanks for calling ABC Credit Union.
I just want to talk to a person.
For customer service, please press 1.
Talk to a person.
For locations and hours, please press 2.
Talk to a person.
To speak to an agent at any time during this call, please press 0 or stay on the line.
Welcome to CX Without the BS. Now, here are your hosts, Tom Milligan and Brian Nichols.
Welcome to CX Without the BS. I am one of your hosts, Brian Nichols.
And I am Tom Milligan.
Thanks for joining us. We are looking forward to our conversation today. And Tom, it's going to be a good one. But first, how you doing? What's new?
You know, I went up to Nashville over the weekend with my sister-in-law, and we drove up to Nashville and saw my second favorite podcast live. My first favorite, of course, is CX Without the BS.
There you go.
My second favorite is called Small Town Murder. So if you're not listening to Small Town Murder, here's my plug for my second favorite podcast. Go to shutupandgivememurder.com and subscribe. And it's a comedy show, but it's also true crime. And it's amazing what those guys have done. And anyway, but yeah, I had a great time. We drove up Saturday and drove back Sunday, and Nashville's a great town. So what about you?
Oh, you know, just odds and ends, and also trying to recover from whatever ick my daughter found at the playground when she was playing with a bunch of other 15-month-olds. So yeah, it's been a little bit of a week and a weekend of trying to get back into the swing of things, but we're getting there, Tom. We're getting there.
Awesome. And you told me you got up early this morning and worked out, and you're a little bit sore.
Oh yeah, I did shoulders today. Still inspired from our first conversation with Michael Del Signore. I'm trying to get up to his max bench. We said it was like what 430 something. So it's going to take a little time, but we're going to get there.
Yeah, a lot more than me. That's all I know about his bench.
So Tom, what do you think? Should we dig into today's episode? I know it's going to be a good one.
Yeah, it is. So let me tell you, we've got a guest today. I have known Andy Andy Bird, CX VP of CX at Avant. He's only been there for a few months, but he's been in this industry forever. So he's got 25 years in the CX space, CX space. You know, I guess they've kind of become synonymous. He's like one of these unicorns because he not only is fun and engaging, but he's also a really highly technical guy.
Yeah.
He's run a lot of teams, a lot of development teams, a lot of product teams. Now, the thing is, Andy was born and raised in Salt Lake City. He and I worked together for years back at the old In Contact days before NICE bought us. He lives in Dallas now with his wife and kids. I know he's an avid off-roader. I think he's going to tell us a little bit about that. We'll see how that goes, but we'll see where the conversation takes us. But anyway, yes. So with that, let's bring Andy on.
Let's do it. All right, on to the show. Andy Bird here on CX Without the BS.
All right, Andy Bird, it is so good to see you again, my old friend. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks, Tom.
That
Always
is so
good to be
great.
here with you.
Yes. You know, just so you guys know, I didn't mention this in the intro, but Andy and I have known each other now for at least 16 years, I think, 15, 16 years. Worked together at the old In Contact and have stayed in touch over the years. And we reconnected just a few months ago at Channel Connect, or Channel Partners, excuse me.
Yeah.
So sorry. Yeah, bad word. But at Channel Partners in Vegas, we had a great time, and it's been really fun working with Andy again. So with that, again, thank you for being here.
Yeah, cheers to that. Thanks, Tom. Glad to be here.
And Andy, I know we'd like to just, jump into things, but I think, just before we get into the meat and potatoes, I would love to, and Tom, I'm sorry, I'm going to put him on the spot to make fun of you. Tell me a fun story about Tom from 10 years ago.
Oh, no, let's not do that. The only fun stories that I remember will probably have to be done over a cup of coffee somewhere else, Brian.
Understood. Okay. It was worth a shot. So how about this? I'll ask this question instead then. So Andy, let's just kind of look back and you can go back 5 years, 10 years, however far back you want to go. How have you seen the CX industry change? Like, what are some of the just, we'll call them like the pillars, right? The main foundational, infrastructure, if you will, of CX. And how has that changed over the past 5-10 years?
Well, CX has just transformed. I mean, and it's transformed over the last decade. And what I mean by that is there used to be, for example, a chief customer officer. So you had this chief customer officer, which was really set, and their goals were CSAT and NPS, right? That's what they were looking for. They were looking for satisfaction for resolving their customers' problems. So you had that. And CX has really taken over the intention of some of what that was about and transformed it into something else. How do we drive ROI and increased interactions? How do we drive increased engagement with our customers? And how do we drive that revenue that we're looking to get? That is really where the transformation has gone. The 6 years is the last 6 years has exemplified that a great deal, where the pandemic kind of shook us all up and people were going, okay, just so you know, I did spend 20 hours on hold. I won't mention the company's name, but I literally put the phone down, went to sleep, woke up, and I was still in queue waiting for an agent during the pandemic. And a very, very critical company too. So nonetheless, that stuff happened. And so people have been trying to augment, react, and correct some of those things that went on during that time. And so there's been this emphasis not just on the people, but on the technology that they're using in order to get that return.
I'm going to ask a quick follow-up, Tom. Andy, what do you think? What do you think it was during the pandemic that really, it really put a spotlight on those warts, right? Like you mentioned being on hold for 20 hours. God bless you. But like, what do you think it was during the pandemic that really made all of these either these flaws or these completely lack of foresight? Like, what was it that led to the really big change we've seen in the CX industry recently?
Well, I think it was everybody had to be remote. They were forced into a remote situation. We all knew that work from home was a real thing. Many of us who had worked from home already for a decade or more. And that became a real thing. So that changed. That changed the nature of everything. Changed the nature of real estate, consumption of power, transport and internet connectivity. It changed that. But then it also changed, how do customers want to engage? Do they want to engage necessarily real-time face-to-face, over the phone, SMS, chat? So the omni-channel that we'd always, there's two things that we've always done in the CX industry, right? Especially from a CCAS perspective, is we've always breathed out the words conversational AI. And we've always breathed out the words omni-channel. Neither of those two things are accurate by any stretch. You want to talk about BS? Nuance, stuff from the past. It was not conversational AI. It was me yelling into the phone, customer service, as loud as I could, right? So we our eyes got opened. We're forced into this situation where we still have to take care of customers. We don't have people coming into the office. By the way, did we need that office anymore?
Right.
And we're going to force them to work from home. And so there became this interaction there. And then the EQ rose, right? The emotional quotient for how we wanted to interact with people, that rose during that time. So voice, while we've always said is a dying medium, actually went through the roof, right? But other people still want, the Gen Zers. I don't know what are we on Generation A yet?
I'm not sure.
Alpha. Yeah, actually next year I think is Generation Beta officially.
it's Alpha.
It's a real thing, I know. Yeah.
Is that what we're doing now?
Alpha, Beta. Yeah, that's what's next.
Who the hell knows? I don't even know what generation I am in. I'm so confused. I just know my parents were the boomers. That's it. Full stop. So
yeah. So are we Xers?
I think so.
I think we're Xers, Tom.
Okay. All right. Well, apparently that's not a big part of our identity. So now we know.
But that transformed everything, Brian. That whole idea of how do we interact with people, and we're seeing residuals of that today. But we are seeing the increased capacity and need. By the way, the hyperscalers took advantage of this, right? Mm-hmm. So they went to everybody and said, oh, you're not going to do real estate? You don't even want to host there anymore. They don't have people to staff with us, or put all your stuff with us. Buy some cloud services and do a big commit, do a big 5-year commit, because this is never going away. And they took advantage of that really, really well. By the way, I don't think I should say that out loud on a podcast, but we're no BS. So what the hell?
Yeah, no BS here. Exactly. Well, so I think that's fantastic. So Andy, let's go back up a little bit and talk a little bit about. I mean, you work for Avant. And
Yep.
what is your title? VP of
Vice
CX.
President of, yeah, VP of CX.
What does that mean? I mean, we all know what VP means. We all know what CX means, but put them together. What does that mean for
What
us?
would you say you do here?
Yeah. What is it that you do here? Well,
Bob.
actually, Bob. So I get the privilege of managing a team of vendor engagement managers. So we're a TSD. So we're a technology solutions distributor. And so we work with vendors such as Sharpen CX, right? And others in order to enable what we call trusted advisors. The old term for trusted advisors was, they used to be called master agents. But back in the day when you had long distance companies and T1s and all that stuff going on, and you were trying to get bandwidth and lower cost and 23+1, right? 23B plus D, if you guys know what I'm talking about there.
Yep.
You're trying to do all that. It would behoove you to get a master agent because they can negotiate between Quest and PacBell and AT&T and get you the best rates. Well, all those folks grew up, and they all not only do transport still, but they also do technology. So you have thousands of these trusted advisors out there. They don't have the wherewithal to go to all the vendors and align all those vendors up so they can resell them. So if they want to sell all your competitors or all anybody else's competitors, all the AI competitors out there, they have to sign these one-off reseller agreements, which stink, doesn't guarantee them anything, and is troublesome across the board. So they work with the TSD, us, where we manage all those vendors, all those vendor relationships, and ensure their success and their ability to resell those products. My job within that is to manage all the UCaaS, CCaaS, CX, and collaboration vendors in my group. And so I have field sales engineers and vendor engagement managers that do that.
Fantastic.
Long answer to a really short question, huh?
Well, but it's a complex. I mean, the channel. People talk about, hey, do you work in the channel? Well, that's a loaded question. But with that, and I'm going to do a follow up. So now you've got all these people that work for you at the TSD or work with you. Tell me about those trusted advisors, because their world has been changed. I mean, again, you and I worked in Contact, and before it was in Contact, it was UCN, and before that, it was Buyers Online, and we sold exclusively through these sub agents or these agents that you talk about that are now advisors or trusted advisors, and they were only selling telecom back then, and
Right.
in Contact, in the early days, 2002, 2003, we started introducing them to sell technology, something other than long distance. And so for better, for worse, we were involved in the bastardization of the channel as it used to be.
I call it the glorification.
The glorification. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a better way to put it. But I guess the bottom line is we had a pretty big hand in making that happen. So,
Sure.
So that kind of was the first evolution, but the next evolution happened over these last 5 or 6 years that you were just talking about. AI, all the technologies, the pandemic, security, all of these things came together in a pretty tight time frame. So talk to me about the partners, the advisors. They're generically partners in my world because everybody calls them something different, which, by the way, is bullshit. You guys should all get together and decide what you're calling your people, your partners, your employees. They should all have a similar org charts. But anyway, tell me about those successful trusted advisors. What are the characteristics that are making them successful today?
They're the ones that want to learn and dig in to solve whatever the customer's problem might be. They're the ones that develop relationships long-term. A TA was just telling me what he called it. But anyway, it had the insinuation of this long-term relationship with the customer, where they literally operate not only as advisors, but friends, consultants, with everything that goes on. And a lot of these trusted advisors have those relationships. So that's key. But second to that, and maybe almost equally important, is getting educated on the newer technologies, on what's come about, or bringing the right people in. And that's where my team comes in. Is you can bring my team in, plus we'll educate you. And those are key. Those are differentiators. I mean, we have thousands of trusted advisors out there, and they're wonderful. I mean, they really are. But the ones who are like, I mean, it's there's a success ratio that trumps everything else when they're educated and they have those good relationships.
Makes perfect sense.
So I want to piggyback on that question that Tom asked, because on the one side, it's important to bring the new technology to the table, but on the flip side, there's also the danger of implementing too much technology too fast and not having it work well together. So what are some of those common issues you see when companies are trying to bring, whether it's their CX or their technology, to the next level, when maybe they go a little too fast? What are some of those red flags?
Well, I don't know that. So if you don't mind, I'm going to correct you on that, because I
Please
don't know
do.
that you can go too fast. Here's where I see the biggest problem. They're doing extensive roadmaps, and so it's no longer that I'm getting involved with the CIO or the CTO. The CMO is now in the room. The COO is now in the room. The CRO is in the room. So I've got multiple people, because the business objectives are now driving a lot of the behavior. You got to think about it from a CIO or a CTO's perspective. They have a legacy of Avaya. It was a capital expense. They've amortized that over, let's say, the last 7 years. So on their P&L that they report back to the CEO or to the board or to the CFO, right? That's a line item. That's done. That's a done line item. Now they have resources that are supporting that. And now you got somebody that's coming in and they're introducing CCaaS to them. That's a change model for them. It not only changes the technology is going on, but it changes the books. Because now I got a different P&L expense that I have to deal with. Well, with AI, now I've got the CMO coming in, because they're going, hey, you can get customer acquisition now. You got the CRO coming in going, oh, by the way, we can get customer acquisition now. And maybe even the operating model has changed. So that changes that entire conversation. So what ends up happening is they overdevelop a roadmap, especially with generative AI. And what I mean by that is they're starting to look 18, 24 months out. And you got to stop. You cannot look that far out. Generative AI, look at ChatGPT 4 and ChatGPT 4.0. Sorry if I say it right. That was less than 82 days between those two versions. And the versions are significant. 3.5 to 4, 90 some odd days. It's moving so fast. You can't do a roadmap beyond 3-month period, because you don't know what's going to change and you don't know where in the business you want. The other thing that's changing is the conversations are no longer CCaaS first, right? I want to change my routing. I want to do a lift and shift and go into the cloud. They're starting to become, and it's not all of them yet. We're seeing this. It's slowly happening, where they're going, hey, tell me how I can get the benefit out first. Do we need to talk AI first? And then we can talk CCaaS later. And so that's been another part that is changing. And that, again, that's just in the last 6 months. That's changed dramatically.
Wow.
Did I get your question enough, Brian?
Yeah, no, you did. Well, and I'll give the context behind my question, because I used to work in one of those aforementioned partners on the East Coast, and we would go in, and I guess, one of the main objections we would hear is, we're going too fast. I have so many stakeholders here at the company that I need to get on board with these certain solutions before we implement it, because, you still got Beverly at the front desk who wants to use the good old, classic telephone, and maybe she's not into all the AI stuff. So that was more, I guess, behind my question. But to your point, it's not so much just the technology and the users, but also the way that now it's customer facing and revenue generating, which is opening the doors to have more of a change agent. But also at the same point in time, we got to keep the context of the technology where it is today versus what was inevitably coming down the road in 3 months, 6 months, or faster. Is that fair?
Agreed. Yeah. And I would add one other component. Start small. Start small. I had a very large customer I was chatting with not too long ago, and they had this big roadmap for what they wanted to do with AI. I said, let's just find one area where your biggest problem is, and let's go solve that first. Let's do that first, and then we'll figure out how we land and expand from there. And by the way, that's been immensely successful, and it's not the only one. So start in a small area where you know where your problems are. And if your problem is your existing contact center, then that's the place to start. And it might not, especially if it's more than one issue. If you have an issue with your reporting, as well as your agent assist, as well as your IVR, sheesh, or shit. Oh, I guess I could say that.
Yes,
shit.
you can.
Get off the pot. Change out your freaking CCaaS, and then we'll implement the AI. Again, it's all about starting in the most problematic area. Start small, and then grow from there.
I'm going to add on to that as well. Years ago, this is how old I am. When I was about 25, maybe closer to 30 years ago, I was at a conference when CRM was the new thing.
Yeah.
And no one quite understood what it was and what it was going to do to our industry. And I remember this lady, her name is Maggie Clanky. She was a big deal at some point in what is now the CX space. And everyone was saying, what is the first step to implementing CRM? And she said, don't implement CRM. That's the first step. Even though she was there advocating for it. But she said, the first thing you need to do is look at all of your processes and make sure they're working really well, because what CRM is going to do is going to speed up your processes. So if your processes are bad, all you're going to do is piss off your customers faster.
Yep.
And I see that same thing. In fact, if you listen to last week's episode, Pam told us a story where AI really was very successful at pissing her off.
Yep.
And so just incorporating or adding AI to whatever you're doing is probably not the right solution. So like you were just saying, take it slow, bite off the piece that you need to chew right now, what's going to have the biggest impact, and then just fix that and then move on to the next one.
Yep. You got to pick an area. You got to focus on that area, make that area work. Try not to get pissed off.
Yeah, you can try that.
You can try that. But I mean, look at the way back in the day, Tom, I mean, again, not to do the historical narrative all the time, but back in the day, the number one and number two things people cared about in a contact center was average handle time and first call resolution.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say that those are the number one and number two things anymore. When I talk to customers, some of them give a shit about average handle time and first call resolution. Yeah, maybe. But again, going back to the whole original premise, what we were talking about is AI is a revenue generator. So you may not want first call resolution. You may not want one call resolution. And by the way, if you're a four-wheel parts seller, and I won't mention their names, and you're selling Bronco parts, not that I have ever bought from them.
And not that you like Broncos.
Not that I like Broncos, but let's just say you are, and you know that you have a 42% close rate on the second and third call. My golly, you don't want first call resolution. And by the way, you know that you have a better close rate after 5 minutes. I'm not saying they do, but they do. And you want to keep them on the phone longer. So you want the average handle time to be increased. So you're no longer looking at reducing those two items. And again, that's just one story, one snippet, but we see that repeated over and over and over again with customers, even in healthcare and in finance. The after selling facts matter now, and using AI at the beginning to get the preliminary information so you can focus your time on doing those upsells is tremendous.
So really containing the non-agent necessary stuff in and let's just use the IVR, the IVA, AI tools, whatever it may be.
Virtual assistant, whatever you want to call it today.
Yeah, bingo. Yeah. So like using that to contain, let's say 80% of the calls, and then when they escalate to that agent, then using the agent to humanize the experience and then look for that revenue generation opportunity.
Absolutely. Yep. You should be looking for ROI in your there's three mainstay areas: the beginning of the interaction, during the interaction, or post-interaction. Always be looking for your opportunities to solve a problem or drive revenue from one of those three areas. Now, there's two other areas. We probably don't have time to talk about them on this podcast, but they're ancillary or secondary, I guess is the best way to put it. But I'm always focused on those first three, and then we'll look at the others later. And that's just the mainstay CX journey. We're not even talking about parallel paths, which is a whole nother conversation as well.
Wow. Well, I want to know what those other two are.
I know, I'm kind of curious.
Yeah.
I might be okay with diverting the show towards that conversation, but that's just me, Tom.
Yeah. What are the other two, Andy?
So the other two are the acquisition of a customer. So there's a whole implementation of AI of almost like the marketing next steps type mentality, right? If I send them out a flyer, if I send them an email, something like that, there's pre-AI or pre-interaction AI, which is done there. And then there is, I've always called it post-post, but somebody else could probably come up with a better name for it, where you're sending out a survey. You're using AI to actually send out a survey and do some recouping. All the while on the parallel paths, you've got AI that works in WFM, WEM across the board that can sit on top as well. So those are those other areas, and they get a little bit outside of what we would traditionally call the CX world. That's why I said it's almost a whole nother show, because if I'm if I'm a Ford dealership, and again, not picking on Ford, but if I'm a Ford dealership and I want to acquire a customer, the first thing you're going to get is that crappy junk mail that says, hey, your warranty is going to expire, call us here and get this. That today is done through a pseudo automated process. There's AI now that can do all that to send that crappy junk mail to you so that you do initiate the call, because from their perspective, the 0.5% hit rate they get on that junk mail ends up being that much to them. Right. So they want it. They want those. And then those post surveys, I mean, you have, what was it? The name of the company that started up while we were there, Tom, Qualtrics. Oh, right. They're making all their money on freaking surveys, SurveyMonkey. All that can be done AI now outside of those companies. And so you can get your survey, get your stats that way, and go report to your board appropriately or report back to your customers.
Yeah. Okay. You're right. Those are outside of what we do, because that takes people with brains, and that's not me.
I doubt. I've known you too long to say that that's true, Tom. It's not.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'm going to take us a different direction here for a few minutes, if we can. We've talked a little bit about what's making, what makes partners successful. We've talked a little bit about what customers are experiencing, and how they might experience AI and some of what we're doing. I'm interested to know why. I mean, this is a chance for you to say, why Avant? So if I'm a partner out there, and you've said that you educate partners and all that, but why is Avant better than your competitors? Just, we don't have to bash your competitors, but, why Avant?
Yeah. I mean, plain and simple. I love one of our founders, what he uses, we're classy. So overall, we are a classy organization. Some of the other organizations out there, I don't know, operate under the same class that we do. And what does class mean? You got to break that down to a couple different levels. One, we got the knowledge and the capability. Let me expand on that a little further. We filter. So I've got 19 vendors in queue. I don't know that I need all 19 vendors that are in queue. And I have 30 more that are waiting in the wings to be in queue. So I have a pre-queue queue that's going on right now. And so I got to evaluate those vendors and go, what is the benefit? Because it costs me to sign up a vendor, right? So every time I sign up a vendor, it costs me. So I'm not just going out and grabbing and having this big plethora smorgasbord. Think of me as a restaurant. The meats that I get are quality, local farm-raised beef, right? That type of a thing. I bring those to the table so I know you're giving quality to your customers. And then second is our knowledge and education across the three areas, the three core areas, which are CX, security, and connectivity or transport, are second to none. That is huge. Not to mention the reason that I work here is a lot to do with, it's the same reason why you work for your boss today. I love my boss. I love my culture in the organization, and that is huge. I have worked for organizations that don't have that, but that translates to our TAs and to our vendors. That culture emanates. And so that's when I say classy, all those things emanate out where you've got good culture, good education, and a chosen vendor selection, not just a random, oh, you got a deal and they like this name and it's a name you've never heard of, let's go sign them up. I don't want to do that. I want to give you the best, that farm raised beef, right? That's locally grown.
I like it. And by the way, just real quick, Brian, do you love Brad?
Do I love Brad? Of course I love Brad.
Okay. Just want to make sure, because Andy said that we
That's
we
the
work
right
here
answer, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Especially if he's going to watch this.
Exactly. Wait, I don't know if he does.
But I mean, our founders are, I mean, you've met them, Tom. They're phenomenal.
They're good people. Good people.
And I trust them. And that's huge. And a lot of corporations you get into, you're just there to say yes to whoever's idea is that is above you. You can't be contrarian. Here, you can break glass and make things happen for the TAs.
Yeah.
I love that, by the way. And Tom, I'll just say one of the things Before I joined Sharp, and I worked at a company called Stratus IP based in the Northeast. And I will say their name because I love the company. Like, still some of the best people I've ever met in my life. And one of the mottos that they have at the company is good people bring out the good in people. And that I cannot emphasize enough. Like, in our industry, to your point, like, it's just so full of people who are just, pushing product and pushing the word yes versus genuinely just being good people, focusing on trying to help the customer and not in it for nefarious purposes, right? Like actually trying to do good. I want to reemphasize how crucial that is in our world and how rare it is.
And you're right. It is rare. I mean, we can talk about other industries, but we have other industries that don't operate under this same auspice.
Yep.
And not necessarily CX. We have an incestuous group, right? Our market, our whole entire thing. I mean, Tom and I have crossed paths multiple times. We could name probably 15 names right here where we've crossed paths with those individuals multiple times. It just happens. And so the whole idea of people who light bridges on fire or do the wrong thing for a customer, that it weighs, it stays with you for a long period of time. And
it'll bite you too.
And that's what the other thing I love about Avant. I don't have to worry about anything on my conscience in that regard. We're doing something wrong for some malicious intent or some corporation that wants to, raise their stock price a little bit.
Yeah. I have one final question. Doesn't mean we have to end the show, but I have only one more question on my list for you, Andy, and it's a tough one because you have to decide how politically correct you want to be.
Okay,
what do you think of Nuco?
Nuco?
Yeah, and tell us this is new agency.
Nuco. I wasn't sure which way you're referring to it. So again, this goes back to the class thing. And trust, and this is the new guy's perspective. So take it for what it's worth. I work for an organization that wouldn't do that, and the reason that we wouldn't do it is twofold. One, there's no reason for us to compete against the TAs that we're trying to serve. We serve our TAs. I have 3 customers: vendors, TAs, and their customers, right? And so those are all 3 one of our customers. And so for me to represent any one of those, for me to be a vendor, for me to be a TA, would go contrarian to our ethical framework of how we operate as a business. Even if you split it out and divided it this way and divided by 12 and did some machinations with some back-end legal paperwork and called it a different company, it doesn't matter, because how my business operates on trust. Tom knows that when he texts me, I'm going to text him back. Now, I might be on a plane, but sooner or later, I'm going to get back to him. Trust with my vendors and trust with my TAs is key, and I don't think that's worth the additional revenue anyway. And again, that's my perspective. The company's perspective has been done on a podcast from Ian and Drew, and so you're welcome to see that. But
I listened to that.
That is definitely mine. And so I'd be remiss if I worked for an organization that did that. I mean, that's kind of like working for well, I can't say that either, but but it'd be you're messing up the dog food. That's what
I agree. And by the way, for anyone out there that is fortunate enough to work with Andy and his team, the other night I was sitting here watching Game of Thrones and my phone rings, and it was pretty late at night. If I remember, it was about 8:30 my time, and I'm in the East Coast, and it was Andy Bird. And I said, well, he's a friend. Of course, I'm going to pick up the phone. So I pick up the phone, and his question was, "Hey, Tom, just checking in. Is there anything you need from me?" And that has literally never happened to me from a TSD or a vendor perspective. And so and little did he know that I was going to ask him to come on a podcast.
No, I did not know that. By the way, you didn't ask me then. You asked me the day after. So yeah, it was I had some vacations, some travel. I always seem to have travel, and I don't ever want to miss people. And again, my team represents that really, really well. I inherited a great team, so I'm very, very fortunate in that regard. Brian, I don't know how long we can go, but man, as you can tell, I can motor it.
Well, unfortunately, Andy, we are at the last question. I can't believe we already got to this part, man. It went fast. Yeah, I looked at the clock. We're already at the 30-minute mark. So, Tom, is it okay if I ask the last question today?
You go for it, man.
Because this question is the essence of our show, and that is, Andy Bird, in your career up to today, what is the biggest piece of BS that you have heard in the CX industry?
Wow. They didn't even prepare me for this.
We got to get our bookers doing something different to make sure you're prepped. Come on.
Yep.
I think the biggest piece of BS is that all CCAS are the same.
Ooh.
And there is a there is an ongoing belief that all CCaaS are equal. And they're just comparing feature functionality, and they're not comparing architectural design, instance-based versus clustering versus where it's hosted, all those things. There is a common belief out there, and there's a common, I would say even some vendors perpetuate it, that that all CCaaSs are alike in that regard. And it's the feature functionality may be similar at the agent desktop, maybe even at the supervisor, maybe even at reporting, but core architecture matters a great deal. Let me add one more to that. 5 nines of reliability. There's no CCaaS on the planet. I mean, it just doesn't happen quite like that. There is a level of 5 nines reliability to a lot of them out there, including Sharpen. But equate 5 nines to reliability. That's 8 minutes of downtime per year. So if you just do the mathematical equations on some of this stuff, that's 5 nines of reliability, 8 minutes of downtime. You add or you lose one of those nines, you're up to a day and a half plus, right? So that whole perception on some of that stuff, I think both those things are BS, which is why I continue to work with Sharpen on a regular basis.
Awesome. Great plug. Thank you.
Andy, thank you so much for hopping on. We really appreciate your insight. And frankly, this is why we have these conversations, because there is so much BS in our industry. So it's important for us to get the BS out of the way, surround ourselves with good people, and frankly, good people like you from a good company like Avant. So thank you for joining us, and we really, really appreciate your time today, man.
No, glad to be here. I'll do it anytime. So let me know. As long as I'm in town, let me know.
We'll have you back, man, for sure.
It was a good chat. So thanks for having me, guys.
Tom, just what an awesome conversation with Andy. Truly.
Such a great guy. I'm proud to call him a friend.
Just and by the way, like I cannot reiterate enough the importance of good people bringing out the good in people. Andy's just a good guy. And like, I know we talked about this in the episode, but like, that is seriously one of the biggest value adds when you go into any buying cycle, is just having good people as a part of that process, because you know that you're going to be having someone actually looking out for your best interests. And that is so crucial in our world. So yeah, Andy is just top of the list, man. Top of the list.
Absolutely. I when I told that story just a minute ago about him texting me or calling me the other night, I mean, that was seriously just 5 days ago.
Yeah.
And it was just out of the blue. There was nothing. I didn't call him first. And who does that?
Right.
And I seriously, I was blown away by it. And I will tell you, the people that work for him are, like he said, he inherited an amazing team, but I think they've become more amazing since Andy started there a couple of months back.
That's pretty darn cool. Well, I know I enjoyed the conversation. And by the way, folks, if this is the first episode you're catching of CX Without the BS, this is episode 3 for us. So if you want to go back in the archives, episode 1, we had our good buddy Michael Del Signore here on the show. And then last episode, we had Pam O'Leary here on the show, and she told us a story about some CX nightmares that she was going through. So please go check out those past episodes here of CX Without the BS. And we want to hear your thoughts. If you are a customer, what is the worst CX experience you've had? We want to hear it down below. So if you're watching us on YouTube, please head below into the comments. Let us know what your experience was. Or if you're on LinkedIn, likewise, head down below into the comments. We want to hear what you have to say. And hey, maybe if it's enough of a horror story, we might want to have you on the show. So pay attention to your messages. We might shoot you a DM. How's that sound, Tom?
I love that. Yeah. Or, if you don't want to come on the show, we might read your, the reader mailbag.
Ooh, I like that. Reader mailbag. All right. So now Tom and I are group thinking here, some different opportunities we can go through. So I like this. Tom, is there any final words you want to leave with the audience today as we kind of wrap up our conversation with Andy?
The only thing I would ask is, if you like what we're doing here, be sure to rate and review what we're doing here, because the podcast gods tell everybody about this based on ratings and reviews, and please share it with your friends.
Every Friday, you will have a brand new episode of CX Without the BS hitting your RSS feed if you're subscribing on the podcast, or yes, over on YouTube's and LinkedIn. So we really appreciate all the fans we've been able to already have joined the show over the past 3 weeks. We're looking forward to the next 3 weeks and beyond. So with that being said, it's Brian Nichols signing off here for Tom Milligan on CX Without the BS. We'll see you next week.
Goodbye, everybody.